Now, he's not president yet, but he will be in 2 weeks. Jacob Zuma's ruling ANC party has coasted to an emphatic victory in South Africa's parliamentary elections. Official results are expected at the weekend, but this is how the picture looks right now. With most of the votes counted, the ANC has won 67%. The main opposition, Democratic Alliance, has taken 16% of the votes, an improvement on the last election. And the newly formed COPE party, a breakaway faction from the ANC, has failed to make any real impact with just 8%. Let's get the latest now from our colleague Jane Dutton, who's in Johannesburg. Jane, Jacob Zuma celebrating already. What can we expect today?
Well, the Independent Electoral Commission will be finalising the vote. We were in Pretoria with them yesterday. You could see those numbers flying up on the board. So the officials there must be absolutely exhausted. Over 20 million South Africans turned out to vote. So they'll be putting that together. We're going to expect the official results to be announced late Saturday afternoon, early evening. All parties have been given 24 hours to raise any objections to this vote. We're happy to say that we haven't heard of any parties coming forward at this stage. Helen Zille, the leader of the Democratic Alliance, is on her way back to Cape Town. Victorious at this stage, it looks like her party has got over 50% in the Western Cape, which means she snatches the Western Cape from the ANC for the first time in 10 years. So she goes from being mayor of Cape Town, where she was able to drive crime down by 90%, to Premier of the Western Cape. The big question, of course, is whether she will form a coalition with the ID Party or COPE, which will extend her presence across the country and give it more colour, because it's a predominantly white-based party. The ANC are planning another party. They had a big one in downtown Johannesburg last night, very champagne-fueled, and I expect more of the same this evening. The Southern African Development Community is saying that these elections and the count have been free and fair. So all good as far as that is concerned. Going to bring a guest into your attention, Peter Kagwane from the South African Policies Institute. Let's talk a bit about Jacob Zuma and his alliance partners. He is closely aligned to COSATU, the Unionists, and the Communist Party. What impact will they have on him? Is it payback time?
I think this victory is essentially the victory of COSATU and the Communists, who are quite disenchanted with Mbeki, particularly because of his policy that seemed to be liberal. Now, I think the hour of reckoning for the ANC has just begun, because it has to resolve eternal ideological divisions within the party, and on whether the Communists and the Communist Party and COSATU are going to take over the party, or he's going to lean towards a more centrist position.
How is he going to unify the party, unite the party? I mean, he has been so divisive as president of the ANC. How is he going to do that now as president? I
think the South African politics itself is beginning to take shape. It might end up being a three-party state, whereby we have now quite of white liberals now in Helen Zille's DA. We have COPE now as the centerpiece for the black liberals and business people, and we might see the ANC becoming more increasingly the party of the grassroots, addressing issues of poverty and taking more of a leftist position. Jacob Zuma's challenge is to come closer to the middle, because all blacks are not, there's a whole question of black empowerment, meaning moving most of the black from poverty.
So Trevor Manuel will be crucial to this, won't he? He's the finance minister. I mean, when he resigned, as he said he had to, when Thabo Mbeki was pushed out of power, the markets dropped by 4%. How's he going to be played?
I think Trevor Manuel is going to be a key role person in this particular transition, because he is the one to maintain the economic kind of legacy that he has built for the last 15 years of continuous growth. But at the same time, he'll be under great challenge to begin doing what Thabo Mbeki's administration was accused of, and doing what it was accused of, which is basically dividing the cake among all South Africans and demolishing the so-called two economies, where we have one which is extremely rich, a first world economy, and one which is down there as a poor fourth world economy. That is the huge challenge that Trevor Manuel is going to face.
What role do you think the Western Cape will now play? If the DA is in control of the Western Cape, there's talk that they could form a possible coalition. But if she's in control of the Western Cape, snatched away from the ANC's hands, how will that play out?
The final vote might not enable her to have an absolute control of the state. So what we have done is that we have gone back to 10 years ago, when she formed a coalition with the DI, one of the smaller parties. But this time, I think strategically, she might want to join with COP, which will give her, as you like to put it, a kind of a reach outside the white constituency, and to begin consolidating DA as a party that has cross-cultural, cross-ethnic, and cross-racial connections. And I think that's really her challenge. And her field, the arena where she's going to reconstruct this new politics, is the Western Cape province itself. And she has proved a very great mobilizer. And I think this is not going to be a great challenge for her.
What about South Africa's foreign policy going forward? Thabo Mbeki was accused of spending more time out of the country than in the country. Jacob Zuma is a very different man as far as that's concerned. And of course, we've got the economy, which will play quite a big factor.
Two perspectives to this. First, Jacob Zuma will be under great pressure to become an inward-looking president, just like Obama is forced to be an inward-looking president to consolidate American economy. South Africa is under larger constraint than that. The second point is that South Africa has emerged as a powerful democracy with unquestionable credentials for African leadership. So he'll be under great pressure now to play a greater role than Mbeki. How he bridges the two, the demand from outside Africa and the demand from inside South Africa by Africa's leading economy, is really going to be the high wire that Jacob Zuma has to walk.
Will he be able to resuscitate the African Renaissance?
Intellectually, he may not articulate it in the same terms as Mbeki, who is an intellectual, articulated it. In any case, he would not like to be seen to be walking on the same footsteps of the person he criticized. I think he'll try more or less to reinvent himself, and he has already begun that by casting himself as a social movementist kind of a leader, who is going to reach out not for the elite Africans, but for the social movements on the continent. Now, how that is going to reverberate with the rest of the African leadership is going to be the question, whether it is going to contribute to his isolation or his embrace by Africa is going really to be an issue. He has already started taking on President Mugabe in Zimbabwe, and he is likely to deepen that. How that is going to pan out in relation to South Africa's relation with the rest of the continent is something to watch.
So interesting times for South Africa. Peter
It really is.
Thank you very much for coming in to talk to us. So a man with a heavy responsibility on his shoulders, Shuli, he certainly was able to energize South Africans to go to the voting polls, whether it was to vote him in or to vote him away from being president of the country. The question now is whether he'll be able to implement change that will affect the poor in this country.